The cameras were rolling, the studio lights blazing, and the audience leaned forward in anticipation as Senator John Kennedy walked onto the set of The View. Few expected what was about to unfold. For years, the show had thrived on heated debates, interruptions, and clashing ideologies. But that morning, something different was in the air, something raw, something honest, something no one could have predicted. As Kennedy took his seat, the co-hosts exchanged glances. They had prepared their talking points, rehearsed their interruptions, and sharpened their rebuttals. But Kennedy was calm. He sat with the kind of steady composure that unnerves opponents. He wasn't there to score points or trade insults. He was there with a message. The conversation began lightly, with questions about current legislation and partisan politics. But soon, the tension rose. One co-host, her voice edged with frustration, pressed Kennedy on his beliefs about division in America. She leaned in and asked, almost accusingly, "Senator, do you really believe people on the other side of the aisle care about this country as much as you claim?" The studio fell silent. It was the kind of silence that makes a moment stretch into eternity. Kennedy's eyes didn't waver. He leaned toward the microphone, lowered his voice, and said one sentence that would change the entire tone of the broadcast. He said, "Disagreeing with someone doesn't mean you have to hate them." That was it, just one sentence, but it cut through the noise like a blade. The audience gasped. Some even applauded. The co-hosts, known for their sharp tongues and fiery comebacks, suddenly found themselves speechless. Kennedy's words struck at the very heart of America's cultural wound, the belief that differences must breed hostility. One co-host, visibly emotional, tried to respond but stumbled over her words. "But, Senator, a broken bar, don't you think a broken bar, don't you see how?" She stopped, her eyes moist, realizing the futility of arguing with such simple truth. Another co-host sat back, crossed her arms, and shook her head, not out of defiance, but out of the dawning recognition that the senator had just spoken aloud what millions of Americans were desperate to hear. Kennedy didn't gloat, he didn't smirk, he just let the weight of his words linger, and then he continued, softer now, almost as if speaking to friends around a kitchen table. "I grew up being taught that people are complicated. They love their kids, they work hard, they struggle, they laugh, they cry. Politics has made us forget that. We've traded compassion for conflict, understanding for outrage. And I'll tell you this, America won't survive on hatred. It will survive on the belief that even if we disagree, we can still respect one another." The studio audience erupted in applause. Some stood to their feet. The cameras captured all of the stunned faces of the co-hosts, the unexpected standing ovation, and the quiet resolve in Kennedy's eyes. For the first time in a long time, the atmosphere on The View shifted from confrontation to reflection. When the segment ended, producers scrambled, unsure of how to cut to commercial without losing the electricity in the room. Kennedy stood, thanked the hosts politely, and walked off stage. But as he exited, the audience continued clapping, louder and louder, until the sound carried through the hallways. Back on the panel, the co-hosts tried to regroup, but the words hung in the air. One of them whispered, "He's right, a broken bar. We've forgotten how to disagree without tearing each other apart." Another nodded solemnly, admitting, "That's going to stay with me." The chaos Kennedy left behind wasn't the usual kind of shouting, anger, or scandal. It was the chaos of realization, the kind that unsettles the heart because it demands self-reflection. His single sentence had pierced through layers of bitterness and resentment, forcing everyone in the room and everyone watching at home to confront their own behavior. In the days that followed, the clip went viral. Millions shared it online, calling it the sentence America needed to hear. Families sat around dinner tables replaying it, churches wove it into sermons, and classrooms used it as a discussion starter. Some said Kennedy had done more to heal division in that one moment than years of political speeches ever had. And as the story spread, something remarkable happened. People began to repeat the lineage not as a political slogan, but as a personal reminder. Disagreeing with someone doesn't mean you have to hate them. That was the legacy of that day on The View. Kennedy didn't win an argument, he won something far greater. He reminded a fractured nation that respect is not weakness, kindness is not surrender, And unity is not the absence of disagreement, but the presence of grace. And for millions watching, that was the sentence that changed everything.